Hello and happy Monday to you. Today is Monday and first day of the week, first day of Sam, first day of live damn radio, first day of international flavor of the week. And so much news has gone on since we last were together last Thursday. Today we're going to get into a lot of stuff. We're going to get into piracy. You know, we're pirates now. Arg, matey, what are you doing? No. What are you doing? We are now pirati, na ljotke gribli, inaetoi ljotke de... Oh, we're not going to do that. That's a very bad Russian limerick that was taught to me by my Russian teacher about pirates. Pirati. In Russian, they're pirati, pirates. And we're going to talk about pirati today because Trump says we are pirates. Arrgh, we are pirates is what he should have said, but he didn't say that. We're going to get to that. I think first, though, I'm going to gauge the temperature because the temperature around the world is getting hotter. And I'm not so sure. Now, I have a great interview that I really thought about providing the whole, and it's actually a youth kind of conference by Medvedev, and it was awesome. He starts out by saying that he wrote a speech for Victory Day. He wrote an article, actually, and he thought he would read the article to this crowd. Now, this crowd is young children. No. I take that back. Young school, like the lowest one. He took a question from a ninth grader, okay, who they went through the whole, and he took a question and he let these people talk about whatever they wanted. So his name's Dmitry Medvedev. He's the deputy chairman of the Security Council, former president of Russia. And he greets the audience and says it was a large crowd because it really was. And it was educators, school children, high school, middle school. Okay, but let's call it high school because the lowest one was that ninth grader, and everybody was young adult, right? And he asked him to get, and so I think I'm going to share that with you tomorrow, though. If we get started on it today, we might. But what it is, it's the temperature around the world is what I really want to talk about today. And Trump's temperature is not conducive to lowering the temperature to a warm climate. It's heating it up badly, and everybody knows I like to watch Solovyov, and it's hard to do. So America, we block him everywhere, and they block him specifically because of what we're doing. But YouTube blocks him every time I try to download his video. It's a game, and every time somebody uploads his videos, it's a game. What they have is people in Arabic countries uploading his video. Or any other place. Call Azerbaijan, who cares? But usually it's an Arabic speaking, sometimes Indian speaking, that they will upload Solovyov in Russian. And his show, the one that I keep telling you about, that is such a good format. And I like the format. Do I understand it's propaganda? Sure. Do I think it needs to be canceled around the world? No. And plus, there's a lot of truth in propaganda. You know, you can weed out what you think is important. And so what I thought I would do is every show that Solovyov gives, especially the Sunday one, and I try to watch the Sunday one because he used to have on there Margarita Simonyan all the time, but her husband passed away. She has children, and she's, I don't know, in her late 40s, maybe she's 50, and she educated in the United States. She runs a large media network, and I loved it when she was on the show, because if you wanted to gauge temperature, those two, Solovyov and Margarita Simonyan, in my view, were people that you needed to listen to. If you're going to listen to Ukraine, it's best that you listen to somebody a little bit more harsh toward the regime and isn't out just pumping Western BS, right? And that is, what the hell's his name now? Arestovich, and I forget his first name, but Arestovich, and I reference him frequently here because I listen to him too, and he broadcasts mostly in Russian as well. And for me, it is just knowing that there are other points of view in the world. Big news this weekend with Trump and the pirates, and so I'm gonna share with you what the whole. Now, these are not my words. This is a translation, fairly accurate. Very accurate of what he said, and it's a strong speech. It tells you about the emotional Russian domestic frame. Before we get into Iran, Hormuz, all the world effects of this constant warring for resources, which is all this is we're still warring over resources. If we could force Ukraine to take over Moscow, then all of the Russian resources would be ours, would be the West's. And that's the goal all along. Russia will just cave like a paper tiger. They will fall over because Ukraine has a 1 million-man army and Russia is the same Russia it was in the 90s. Well, they found out that is not true, and it's not remotely true, in fact. And so the people who have been pumping that agenda are morons, and you can tell them I said that. And that is not the Russia that I see every time I go over there. And I'm not led around by a KGBist. I'm not led around by some sort of охранники, security dudes. I'm not led around by that. I'm completely free to go where I want, see what I want, do what I want, to see the sights, to see how they live, what they do, the wonderful culture, and all of those things. I'm perfectly permitted to go. I tried to get on Red Square last year, though, and they were having I reported from there a little bit that they were having a festival. It was the drum corps of, 50 different countries, that the military drum corps showed up and did a march, and they were having an exhibition of this drum corps. And so I didn't get on Red Square proper because it was only for those drum corps to organize and come back. But it was really cool. All the way around Red Square, people were packed everywhere to watch the events, and they'd bring out one drum corps at a time and watch them go, and there was awesome food booths everywhere. I mean, it was fantastic. And the country is not what is pushed over here. And so the people are not what they push over here. Putin is not what they push over here, and neither is Medvedev. And so I like to share their words when I can. And tomorrow, because I don't think I'm going to get to it today, I'm going to share all of the questions and all of the answers from a youth perspective with Dmitry Medvedev, answering them in an appearance in front of a large auditorium. I believe that man is very likely to be Putin's ultimate replacement. He's quite popular. He's very intelligent, and he's been around in the system for a long time. And if you think that, everybody thought forever, these idiot experts, that, oh, geez, just get rid of Putin, everything will be great. Putin, I don't want to say he's loved, but he sure as hell isn't hated, and they recognize what he has done to that country over the last 25 years, or done for that country over the last, 25 years he's been around, okay? Much of that as president. And I believe the big start started in 2007, 2008. So I'm going to share with you Solovyov and what he said, because I think the temperature around the world is important. And his temperature last night was pretty hot, and I'm going to tell you why. I can't play it for you. Obviously, you won't understand it. I'm going to contextualize it and say I'm not adopting these terms myself. I'm telling you that this shows how hard the Russian domestic mood is, because a lot of people listen to him. A lot of people around the globe listen to this guy because he speaks in everybody's mind the truth. Now, I say that much of what he is doing is absolutely the truth. Much of what he is saying is absolutely the truth. And that is why he is blocked so hard in Europe and America, and they aren't allowed to listen to you. If you're not afraid of what he is saying, why block him? Words, they're only words. If you have no fear of speech, then don't block him. And why do you fear speech? Why you fear the truth is what you fear. And there are kernels of truth in everything. Well, except Clinton's. There's not a kernel of truth there. And in most Democratic politicians, but I throw in that same pile, the lifelong rhino. I received a letter in the mail the other day, and I digress, of course, but I received a letter in the mail about an agency I built, and it's not defunct; it's still there, and I keep it active, but I've never done anything with it. But I own a domain. I own I started an organization, and I don't believe I ever got 501c3 for that. I haven't ever done anything with it. I started to organize it. I had a couple of interested people that wanted to join in, but I didn't do it because I had a lot of things going on in my life, and it was called No Lifetime Politicians. And and one of my biggest beefs in America is this lifetime politician, deep state BS, funded by the same a-holes all the time. And it's the exact same people. Mitch McConnell sitting there with his thumb inserted for 50 freaking years. Lindsey Graham has been there, since '01 or something? That is, it's just incredibly offensive to me. And they will never set a term limit. Why in the world do we have a term limit for president? Why? So they don't accumulate power? You think it's any different in the judicial branch, for God's sake? What's wrong with, what if you made a rule that said every president could appoint two chief justices, and the ones that had been there the longest had to go? What's wrong with that? You wouldn't have people dying in office. This is nonsense. And even in the judicial branch, it's crap. And there needs to be a better way. And, oh, geez, you can't talk bad about the system. Well, I can, because I'm not a lawyer. How about that? And the system sucks. Missouri's is bullshit, and Missouri's is as corrupt as hell. And you can't stop that. And don't think it ends at Missouri. And they control the bar with an iron fist by people who are unelected. It's not even the Supreme Court that controls the bar. It's controlled by a family of goons who pick and choose who gets to be in charge and who they destroy. And they destroyed me. And so I went all the way to Supreme Court fighting what is wrong. And I'm right, by the way, but nobody would listen. Why? Because it affects the system. Fight from within the system. Screw you. Fix the system. Even if you're from outside, that is crap. Our system sucks. And it needs to be fixed. Now I'm pulling a Solovyov on you, and I'm doing what he did last night. But there should be anger among the masses. There absolutely should be, with the crappy way our government is run. And what the West has done is ride roughshod over the rest of the world forever. And the old war in Hormuz is all it is a continuation of the exact same thing by a different person. Okay, the propaganda here is, oh, geez, they've been riding for 49 years, 47 years. They've been destroying people. I'll play you the quote for old Trumpster, and he's obviously selling something, and that's what he's doing. He's a deal maker, and he's not a politician. If he was, he would learn that what he's doing is incorrect. Now, and I always get, I call it like I see him. If it's a ball, it's a ball. A strike, it's a strike. It doesn't matter who's at the plate. I call it like I see it. And the truth doesn't change based on the audience I'm speaking to. Oh, brother mine. We wish to talk the truth. Well, let's talk about the truth for real and not as something that changes based on the audience. That's nonsense. Or based on the goal you're trying to get. The truth is the truth. End of sentence. And you can interpret the truth as you like, but basic facts are basic facts. And here are the basic facts. So when I read to you what the old Solovyov monster said last night to his Russian audience and to many, many people around the world, because people watch him, even the Arabic guy that I uploaded it from his site, He had nearly 10,000 views wherever he's located, But he's an Arabic channel and upload the Russian part of it because you can't get on YouTube from Russia. It's nonsense, and that we're blocking all that. And so, and part of it has to do with this blocking because part of Solovyov's speech was exactly about that. And so I'm going to jump right in and say what he says. I want to give a little bit of a caution. He does get. I don't know what it's rhetoric, of course, but he says, they're killing our people, they're killing our officials. Trump kills he's said this over and over, not in this appearance, but he said, Trump's killing leaders, Trump's getting rid of them, and it's in the clip I'm going to play for you. Maybe we should start to act the same. Something said, maybe we should go in and kill all the Ukrainian leaders. We could do it. We could do what Trump did and go, take Maduro, is basically what he's saying. We could do the same to Zelensky. Zelensky wouldn't be protected. And we could kill them all. We could do what Trump is doing and just say, well, that's the world we live in. Sorry. And so anyway, here we go. But I don't want to frame it, at least, that this is Solovyov's language, not mine, but it does show how hard the mood has become in Russia and, frankly, around the world about all the turmoil that America's creating. So I want to tell you about the broader platform thing. In March of 2022, YouTube did announce it was blocking access globally to channels associated with the Russian state-funded media. But I was able to get it. Every year I'd go to Russia, and it was all fine until I went to the BRICS conference in late 2024. And then suddenly blocked. I was blocked, in fact. And anything associated with Russian state-funded media, my ass, it's not just state-funded media. It's any media that has anything positive to say about the Russian side. And they cite its own policy on violence, right? Reuters, Euronews says that YouTube said this would apply globally and take effect immediately. TechCrunch reported YouTube's move as a global block on Kremlin-backed state-funded outlets, not a Europe-only restriction. So Solovyov material survives on YouTube only through fragments, reposts, and the game that they play of digital whack-a-mole. That's how it works. And so it's hard to get this information. So I'm going to begin. Here's where it starts with Solovyov, okay? Good evening. Of course, the main problem right now is security inside the country. At the same time, we need to separate things clearly here because people's emotions are understandable. Everything is obvious. Tonight, it was once again extremely alarming in St. Petersburg. Once again, they say the Baltics flew things at us, but not for long. We need to stop talking. We really simply need to stop. Europe is terribly happy that the Luftwaffe, or whatever they want to call the Nazis and the current ones calling something similar, have reached the Ural Mountains. They blew up another Russian refinery deep inside of Russia. They could not reach the Urals, but the Ukrainian Nazis did reach the original Nazis couldn't reach the Ural Mountains, but the Ukrainian Nazis reached the Urals. That miserable Kaya Kallas is delighted that the parade, the Russian Victory Day parade on the 9th, will be without military equipment. Fool, what are you so happy about? We will need that military equipment when we trample you and your friends. Oh, forgive me, the words fool and trample. I hope Kaya Kallas files a complaint against me. Or should I switch to Estonian language so you understand me? After all, quite suddenly I've become the most popular character in Italy. Now all Italians are saying, finally, Solovyov is telling the truth about all of them. Well, I can tell you the truth about our governments in various languages. The truth is simple. European governments do not want to see that the strikes being carried out deep inside the territory are possible only because they steal money from their taxpayers and send it to Ukraine, either already in the form of a finished product or in the form of what those products are later manufactured to. Your reconnaissance equipment, European reconnaissance equipment, guides these weapons for strikes against our cities and so that civilians can die. You hunt our civilians and think we will forgive you for this? You are mistaken. So let us break this down into several clear points. What is happening at the front? At the front, we are pressing forward. This is absolutely true. And they're gaining lots of ground recently. So much so that Sumi is already understanding that things are going to be very difficult for them, and people have started running from that place. So much so that Kharkov itself understands that nothing of this is so cheerful anymore, and life in Kharkov is becoming harder and harder. Not quickly, but while minimizing our own losses, we are advancing on a number of fronts. I want to remind you, Zelensky was shouting that just a little bit more money and they would clear Kupiansk of Russians. Well, how is that going? Remember Kupiansk? It's now completely Russian, far in the rear now. And how is that going? Not long ago, they were also saying they had liberated 500 square kilometers. Where? They can't show it. They said, we are killing more Russians than they are recruiting. Then why are they screaming that it is not even close? We have volunteers coming forward while in Ukraine. Again and again, the map looks more and more frightening for them. Hang on a second. The old slurp in the microphone. There are images of forced recruitment, and there definitely are, and they're getting worse. There are maps of cities on Ukrainian territory where active hostilities are taking place against the TCC recruitment centers. This is the boosification of the Ukrainians. Here, someone threw a grenade. There, someone used an automatic weapon. They threw a grenade at one of the recruiting centers and blew it up. And then somebody else is using an automatic weapon to shoot in through the windows and stuff. This recruiting center. They're trying to kill the recruiting people. Somewhere else, in Ukraine, somewhere else, a recruiter was cut with a knife. Somewhere else, there was shooting with pistols between them. They've been allowed to carry pistols now, and so people are getting the crap beat out of them and thrown into the back of vans and taken to this training place, trained, if you want to call it that, for 2 weeks and shipped out to the front to die. You know, that is exactly what is going on. And so these things are true. And this is why they don't want to hear Solovyov say them. They show how the Ukrainians attack our ships and how they strike our oil refineries. Well, let us finally start showing what their cities look like, their enterprises, and their infrastructure centers what they have turned into. It would be simpler. Why do we not show pictures of how many ships we have sunk? Where and how? Ships that tried to come into port. Why are we losing this information battle? Europe should see pictures of what is burning on the territory of Ukraine and how it is burning. Why not? Because the number of our traders happily film and post everything wherever they can. What he's saying is, in Russia, we have freedom of speech. We can take video and post it. While over there, strict censorship operates, so it is impossible to get pictures from there. And they've blocked everything. They can't, Ukrainians can only send out positive pro-Ukraine things. They're not allowed to speak. Everybody gets banned. YouTube banned Panchenko. That was bullshit. Pardon my French. She had 2 million followers. Why? Because she was telling the truth, and they got rid of her. But every time I say that those who film impacts like Russian oil places and upload them should be punished in the harshest way, people say to me, how can you say that? What are you saying? By the way, this is prohibited all over the world, but here in Russia, someone is always trying to say, come on, what's the big deal? It's, free speech. No, it is a big deal. A war is underway. Solovyov is against it, and he repeats it. A war is underway. And if a war is underway, then allow me to ask simple, clear questions. If strikes went on for a week against Ust-Luga, all right, and on the first day, impacts happened. But what about the second day and the third? Why did that happen? Why were all the forces and means necessary to repel attack not transferred there? He's beaten up on his own country and their defenses right now. If this is the fourth attack on Tuapse, and Tuapse is the city I was talking about last week where they had whatever it was, 28 oil refinery tanks for export, and the Ukrainians blew virtually all of them up and attacked it 4 days in a row. Why did concentration of forces and means like equipment not happen after the first strike? If something flies 1,500 kilometers, why is it not shot down? I simply want to understand. What is the problem? Do we not see it? Do we not understand what is going on? Do we not know that something just doesn't correspond to reality? We see how Moscow is defended. We know how well it is organized. But those who are supposed to know. Is there nothing to shoot with? Excuse me, but I myself went there. On Thursday night, we worked. On Friday, Wednesday night, Thursday, while working, we worked with the system, in particular, the least. And I don't know what the least is. He said it's a brilliant interceptor, a very promising interceptor produced in large quantities. And most importantly, who is the person responsible? Tell me, please, do we have one person who is responsible for the entire air defense system in our country? He's beaten up on his own military here. I want to remind you that everything is still broken up among agencies. Where, how, what, who is responsible for what? Maybe it's time to abandon that line of thinking. Why is the Moscow experience not being replicated everywhere else, is what he meant. Why is there still no single person responsible for the entire national air defense system with emergency powers? We have said that many times. Do we not understand that the enemy is planning to do everything this week? And why? It's because it's Victory Day week. Because they need to distract attention. And in general, they are profoundly indifferent to lives. We could wipe out all of Ukraine. This group of scoundrels, terrorists, and villains who have stolen every bit of money they could, they are indifferent to the fate of Ukraine. Now, I believe that too. The leaders in Ukraine, the people of Ukraine are good people. The people of Russia are good people. The Ukrainian military is gone, decimated, destroyed. And, these leaders, all Western, including in the U.S., by the way, those that are, we're not doing enough for Ukraine, they're the idiots, okay? And the Western leaders are also the idiots, in my humble view. I'll be happy to debate with them. Bring it on. But they are indifferent. Now I'm going to continue with Solovyov. They are indifferent to the fate of Ukraine. They care only about their personal wealth. They care only about how much money they will continue to receive. They do not need peace, and they do not need a ceasefire. And this is directly what is said in the now famous Mindish tapes. Mindic was the guy who ran off to Israel with $100 million in fraud that he stole from the money. One of Zelensky, or from the country, from the people. He's one of Zelensky's closest backers. I told you about him last year when this happened. I want to say it was like November or something. And there are tapes where he says, no, we need the war. We need this war. What do you mean, stop the war? Then the quote says, what do you mean, stop the war? Then we will not receive any money. That's Mindic. And in reality, these tapes, these Mindic tapes, are the main thing now killing the Ukrainian government. Here's some truths for you. That is why they are ready to do anything, shift attention, shout that we're about to use nuclear weapons, because in these tapes it is stated clearly and plainly, Ukraine is not led by some modern Churchill, but by a vile, disgusting, lying, thieving creature. He's talking about the Green Goblin. Why is he not condemned in Europe? Because all of them live on the money that this scoundrel distributes to them from the money stolen from European and American taxpayers. That is why Kaya Kallas is bought and paid for. She is a bought and paid for creature maintained by Zelensky. Merz is maintained by Zelensky. Macron is maintained by Zelensky in one form or another, through different systems of foundations, through systems of kickbacks. The entire European ruling class, including the European bureaucracy, with Ursula von der Leyen in the front ranks. Excuse me. All of them are sitting on money in one form or another that is laundered through Ukraine and distributed, just as it was with the Democratic Party of the United States, which it was. But he's mistaken there. It was the Republicans just as much as the Democrats, with all these NGOs, U.S. Agency for International Development. They filtered millions, billions through Ukraine over the years. We all, what about the famous son of Biden, the Hunter Biden Burisma BS? That's they've been throwing money through there and laundering it to the proper people for a decade. A little more than a decade, at least since 2014, when we supported the coup on was it Poroshenko? Yeah, I think it was. But let's see. And these schemes are being investigated. That is why there will be shouting, but no one will dare pay attention to the fact that at the head of the Ukrainian Nazi regime stands a thief who kills his own people and steals money from American and European taxpayers. Now, this is harsh, but this is the temperature in Russia. The Americans, in the person of Trump, understood this and said, enough, not interested. But the Democrats who were sitting on the fees are shouting, no, 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 give more. They want to give money. And this is still Solovyov, still got a little ways to go. Everything is complicated. Everything is complicated. NATO is falling apart. Without Trump, it is nothing. Zelensky shouts, I do not care about America. I am with Europe. I already bought it. I control it. Do we want to change this situation? Then let us act the way the Supreme Commander-in-Chief of the Russian Federation, President of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin, clearly formulated the fight against terrorists, because they are terrorists. They must be wiped out. If we catch them in the toilet, then wipe them out in the toilet. Wipe them out. Zelensky, Fyodorov, Budanov, and I can go on, listing them by name. Physically destroy them. That is the only thing they fear, the only thing they tremble over, not the lives of Ukrainians. And that they are terrorists became clear on May 2 of 2014, and we have still not avenged that. He is talking about the Union Hall massacre, where they burned people alive. The Ukrainian Nazis that currently control the country burned Russian people alive who were protesting against the coup that happened in 2014. So in May of 2014, they burned them alive in the Union Hall in Odessa, and nobody talks about it. And we still haven't avenged it. We have not punished it. Memory is not enough. Revenge is necessary. Revenge is necessary. And then he passed off to one of the other speakers. And so his points, could be pretty harsh. He's not, he's talking about Russian internal security, especially during Victory Week. This is a big week for them. Первого мая, all the way through 9 Maya, 1st through the 9th, is a big holiday over there. And I'd like to be there for that. I was there for it 1 year in the city of Naberezhny Chelny, and it was actually very, I don't know how to say it. I suppose it was somewhat patriotic and even somewhat moving, because at night the fireworks were going on. Okay, imagine this. Driving through, pick a city the size of Naberezhny Chelny in America. Call it, it's bigger than Columbia, but call it about the size of Columbia, Missouri. Okay, and imagine, even in Columbia, that a fireworks display is going on citywide, multiple places around the city. Huge fireworks were seen everywhere on the city, and all the traffic stopped at whatever it was, 9-10 p.m. whenever these fireworks started, and they went on for 10-15 minutes, and then everybody got back in their car and moved. The entire place stood still. There was nothing happening except people watching the fireworks and thinking about it. I was in an Uber, Yandex over there. I was in an Uber at the time, and the driver says, well, we stop for these things, get out and enjoy it, enjoy the fireworks, have a look at it. There were cars stopped, kids sitting on top of the car, dad and mom's out, and it was a huge affair. It's friggin' Victory Day. They remember what happened when the Nazis came and they lost 26 million people. They remember it. Every family was affected. Ukraine wants to forget it because Ukraine, if you want to talk the true Ukraine, not the Russian Ukraine, those separatists were Nazis. They wanted to kill Russians back. Stepan Bandera was a Nazi, and he killed the people. So, the truth is out there if you just go look for it, and Ukraine is not the good guys in this thing. We have teamed up with a bunch of ultra-nationalist types in the West, and it's just wrong. First of all, we have nothing to do with these conflicts in Europe. They've been overrunning each other for centuries. We have nothing to do with it, and it's not going to stop. It should stop, but it won't. They have 50 different cultures packed in a smaller area than the United States. And, I think it's about equal. But it's still, they have tons of different cultures in there, and those cultures don't mix. Ours is still basically American melting pot. We have troubles, hell, you go to Miami, they're either speaking Russian or Cuban or now Haitian. It's places. I can't get help at the freaking grocery store. Sorry, no English. Where whatever. Where's the coffee located? No English. Off they go. You can't get help from anybody. You got to go talk to 5 people before you get one that speaks English, and that's the truth, actually. So anyway, I did another sip. So it's pretty harsh, pretty damn harsh what Solovyov said. What is he really doing? He isn't talking about Iran. He's talking about internal security, escalation psychology, and domestic anger. He's telling the audience that the war is no longer over there. St. Petersburg, Ust-Luga, Tuapse, Moscow, oil refining, ships, deep strike drones are all part of the same argument. Russia is under attack on its own territory, and the European government is and are participants, not observers. They're allowing people to fly through Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Finland to get to oil tankers inside of Russia. NATO countries are involved. They're allowing it to happen. And it's true. This is escalatory talk. And so his first major point is European intelligence and financing. It makes deep strikes possible. Second point is aimed at Russia. He's complaining that Russia is losing the information war by not showing the destruction inflicted on the Ukrainian military. He contrasts this with Ukrainian and Western presentation of every strike against Russian ships and refineries, and he turns on the Russians who are filming those to say, quit it. It wants to make it a crime. His third point is direct criticism of the Russian air defense. This part is unusually important. He asks why this is going on in pretty blunt terms. After 1,500 kilometers and we're not taking them out, what do we lack, basically? This is an internal policy complaint. And you think he's pro-Kremlin on that? Tell you what, I guarantee you he's either getting some... somebody wants to twist that narrative, but people are pissed off inside of Russia. Why wouldn't you be? Would we be? Here we are at the Lake Ozark real state-of-the-art studio, and a 1,500 kilometer missile flies up through Mexico and bombs Osage Beach or Lake Ozark or anywhere, Jefferson City, and what would we say? Well, geez, where were our air defenses? What happened to we're the greatest in the world? Israel's having some of the same complaints. Air defenses cannot keep up with all of these drones. And this massive drone, it's a different world than it was with the missiles. Why do you think Donald Trump wants to spend $500 million on drone technology? He sees it coming. We are no longer the king of the mountain as far as military technology. And by the way, lots of countries are buying from other sources and backing out on U.S. military equipment. So his fourth point is Ukraine's leadership does not want peace because the war is a money machine. And their corruption, the Mindic tapes, the Western funds, the European political kickbacks, the broad claim that Ukraine is a laundering mechanism for the Western political and bureaucratic interests, which, by the way, it is. That gives you a bridge, to talk about all the rest of the stuff, right? Everything that goes on in government in the West is funded by Ukraine. The war and all the money, all the filthy money that gets kicked back through the deep state types, the military-industrial complex types. His most inflammatory point was the part where I read you that he talked about killing people directly. Now, Donald Trump does that all the time. Nobody says a word. He killed them. We can't even talk to them. I'm going to play his tape for you after we take a little break with it. But the fact is this, whether you agree with Solovyov's rhetoric or not, and I don't agree with all of it. I agree with a good amount of it. What it shows is the depths of the Russian fury after all of these deep strikes and terrorist-style attacks. They attacked an apartment building in Moscow yesterday. It was on the news this morning. Let's see if I can find it. Where is it? Ukrainian drone hits a skyscraper in Moscow. 52-story building in Russia's capital business district. High-rise residential building near the Moscow business district, according to Mayor Sergei Sobyanin. The UAV, unmanned aerial vehicle, struck the 52-story building known as the House on Mosfilmskaya. Mosfilmskaya is the street. A modernist landmark built in 2010. The impact reportedly occurred at the 36th floor. There were no casualties. Photos and videos from the scene show debris damage to the facade and scattered into the street. The attack took place ahead of Victory Day on May 9, one of Russia's most important public holidays, marked by a military parade on Red Square. And there's debris all over the place. Eyewitnesses say they had heard a powerful explosion. Some said they saw a flash in the sky and smoke rising from the building. Ukraine is stepping up strikes deep inside of Russia, launching hundreds of kamikaze drones every day. Although successful strikes in Moscow are rare, Ukrainian drones damaged high-rise buildings in Moscow City, the capital's iconic business district, in 2023 also. So there's anger, about this type of stuff. They're not happy. And, oh, man, I want to get to the Solovyov, and I messed it up. I clicked the wrong screen. Sorry about that. But we're going to take a break anyway, because I was just about done with that, and I'm going to play for you some Ruskaya muzika, Ruskую muziku, perhaps, depending on where you put it in the sentence. And we're going to go, I really want to play again, and I think I'm going to this week, that Ota Orchestra, the Royal Safari that I found last week. I've played it like 10 times since that time, and I'm going to do it one more time on the show. Maybe I'll do it if we take a second break, but right now we're going to do some soy. And we're going to play that and see what song is out here. Let's see. We're going to find the one that I want to find, and the one that I like. And I like this song in particular, so I'm going to play it again for you just because I can. Enjoy, please. Where is the right screen drag here? Sorry, I'm a little slow on the uptake today. That was a hell of a crowd there. That's Victor Tsoi, and Kino is the name of the group, and it's Kukushka is the name of the song, and it's a very good song. Come out in the 90s. I think Tsoi passed away. I think he's dead from something, but I don't remember what. But anyway, I play that song, I don't know, probably once a month-ish here on the show. I like it, and it's representative of the 90s in all truth, although I'm very much interested in this OTA, O-T-T-A, I think it is called. And it is, I may play that for us later as well. But right now, I want to play something for you that was troubling for me. I didn't like it. And whether we can get through the whole 5 minutes or not remains to be seen, because I didn't like it. And maybe I'm a softie. I don't know. But I don't like this callous, cavalier, warmongering and discussion of things, of theft and of stuff like that. And you can have your own opinion of it, but I don't like it. I think it plays very poorly, especially on the world stage and mostly in the United States. It's not, you got your people out there going, yeah, we showed them. Okay, great. But this is not how you run a country. It's not how you do it. And, this is red meat for the hungry, basically, the warmongering. I imagine Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell sitting up there slobbering on the Hill because of speech like this, and because it means more money for them and their friends. And they like to hear this stuff. But let us see what shall be seen here, and I hope it's at the right spot in it. But here's the old Trumpster over the weekend.
Problem, because we
went too far. Hold on. See, I got to figure out how to do this correctly. See, if I whisper, I could, I don't know what, maybe it's stronger, according to some people who like to whisper when they say things. But anyway, here's the old Donald Jayevich, and here he goes.
That go over the ocean, and they hear them from 2 miles away. Turn your ship around. Turn your ship around. And all of a sudden yes, we are going back to Iran. We are going back. They turned it around. It takes 10 miles to turn the sucker. It's not like turning around a bicycle. It's big stuff. And then we had the other one you saw from 4 days ago where they were going to ram the We call it an iron wall. It's essentially an iron wall. We have such great military and great navy. And they were going straight through. And they said, turn your ship around. And there was no response. Turn your ship around. Evacuate your engine room immediately. And you see all these guys running out of there. Now, they're 5 miles away. And one shot into the engine room blew up the engine room. The ship stopped. They used tugboats, and then we landed on top of it. On top of everything else, we then land on top of it, and we took over the ship. We took over the cargo, took over the oil. It's a very profitable business. Who would have thought we were doing that? We're like pirates. We're sort of like pirates. But we're not playing games because, for 47 years, Iran has been pushing everybody around. They're the bully of the Middle East. They've been scaring everybody, Israel and Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait, all of them. They're all, it was the bully of the Middle East. I understand it. Bush made a mistake. He took out Iraq. Iraq, and by the way, I congratulate the new president of Iraq. I endorsed him. I'm now in the business of endorsing political leaders from foreign countries that nobody's ever seen before. And we have a pretty infallible record. We've won a lot of them, but I endorsed the man because we didn't like the man that was the president of Iraq, and we endorsed somebody that not a lot of people have heard of, and he won in a landslide. So I just spoke to him yesterday. But the relationships we have relationships that are very, very strong, very powerful relationships, and I think the Middle East is going to be taken care of. We had a lot of conversations with the leaders. I call them the new leaders.
Okay, the rest of that is, him crowing about, well, maybe I should play it for you, because he crows about the killing of people. This I do not like. This is highly offensive to me, every bit of it. And there was scattered applause at the Forum Club where he was doing this, but not very much. There's a lot of people not clapping.
The new regime, they kept saying, the radical left, where is regime change? Well, if this isn't regime change, there's no such thing. Because Khomeini in the first tier was gone. The second tier is gone. Half of the third tier is gone, which is a problem. That's a problem. Because we are trying to figure out the right one to talk to. We talk to one, and then another one calls up. Let's make a deal. But I think we're in a very, I know we're in a very strong position. There's the expression that we've all heard, or many of us have heard, if you like the fights, if this were a fight, they'd stop it. But again, their military they have some missiles left. They have some missile-making capacity left. We've knocked about 85% of their manufacturing capacity for new missiles out. We've knocked about 82%, but that means they have missiles left. We knocked out most of their drone-making factories, but they have some drone capacity left. And drones are pretty effective, but we've also developed, in the meantime, if you remember, the German U-boats were a horror. Nobody could stop them, and then all of a sudden they come up with sonar, and it went from nobody could stop them that it was the worst place in the world to be is in a U-boat. The drone, anti-drone capacity that we have now is fantastic. They have new weapons, lasers. You can see the lasers. They go into a laser, they just burn they just boom. And we have that, and we have very special machine guns with large-scale bullets operated by a computer. And as they come in, it just knocks them out like it's amazing. But with all of that being said, there's still danger. There's always danger with war. With war, you never know what happens.
I thought the war was over. He declared last week that the war was over. So he called it a military exercise or action. It's a small military action. It's over. That way he doesn't have to get war powers from Congress. But I find that entire rhetorical statement quite offensive, and I don't like that. This is war. These are people, okay, and it's just as offensive as the stuff that Solovyov said about killing the heads of state. And theft isn't good in any piracy. Oh, geez, we're proud of it. It's very profitable. We're going to go steal their stuff. Okay, so we are the thieves of the world. We are the pirates. So now we're glorifying what we're doing. Well, trust me, the rest of the world is not, and they don't see it that way. And I tell you, let's go to some of the thought processes around the world, okay? Economically, let's talk about this. So there's U.S. Treasury, like this is reality, okay? This is no longer just an Iran war. And Trump wants to talk about the glory of what the military is doing and make them feel positive about this BS war that we are involved in, that we never should have been involved in, and that he can't get out of. And he's having trouble. He learned that Ukraine didn't depend on him. I could get rid of that in one day. Yeah. Why are we, year and a half in, and there's nothing been done? This isn't just an Iran war. It's a test about whether or not Washington still commands the world economy by threatening everyone else's shipping, banks, oil supply, and sovereignty, right? So the Trump says he wants peace, but every operational move, pressure, blockade, sanctions, piracy, and public humiliation is his bag. He wants to publicly humiliate whoever he's against. That's not deal making. That's bullying. That's piracy. Reuters reports that oil remains still above $100 a barrel. No peace deal in sight. Iran has proposed setting aside nuclear issues till after the war ends and the opposing shipping blockades are lifted. Washington Post says Iran's plan calls for cessation of hostilities, 30-day period for detailed negotiation, gradual reopening of the strait, mine clearing, a lifting of U.S. sanctions, all while Iran is denying media claims that the proposal contains any nuclear concessions. Iran has been offering, and they appear to still be offering, a path to stop the bleeding first and negotiate a deeper nuclear issue secondary. Trump is demanding surrender first and calling it diplomacy. Well, this is exactly what Putin has been saying in Ukraine. The Ukrainians, the Europeans, the Americans all want capitulation of Russia first. Cease fire first. Then let's talk. And all that does is allow them, and Trump knows that. He knows that if he doesn't continue the war, Iran will continue to rebuild and do what it's doing. Iran doesn't want to stop this war either. Not without knowing that the real bully of the Middle East, which is nowhere close to Iran, that they can't just start war again 2 weeks later on a whim and Trump can jump right back in and follow Netanyahu. That's the issue. Nobody believes us. Nobody. And nobody believes the rhetoric that Iran is the bad guy. Iran, I'm not calling them good guys, but the bad guys are us and Israel. And, the nuclear threat isn't Iran, it's Israel. That's what it is. And there's no doubt every time something is started, it's very rarely started by others. It's usually started by Netanyahu and crowd. And then at least the last two big ones certainly have been. They're opportunistic. They know that they could, manhandle Trump into doing it, and so they did. That's what happened. And so it's the world economy, this sanctions and the war on the world economy. This is where the core point is that the world economy is not just experiencing a temporary disruption. It is absolutely fragmenting. The U.S.-China trade and investment will never return to the old pattern of what it was. Trump says he's going to sanction any country that buys Iranian oil. Well, the largest supplier of China is Iran. And European and Russian links are going to be damaged for at least a generation. It's going to take a long time for that to be repaired, if ever. Asia is integrating into itself. Europe is left adrift economically with no resources from either side except high dollar American ones. They can't get it from the Middle East now. They can't get it from Russia, so they have to get it from the U.S. And they're trying to get it from Canada, and Canada's going to make a buttload of money about it. If your own allies don't trust you, which is what's going on now, our own allies don't trust us, certainly don't trust Trump, and they're all making alternatives. They're buying military equipment from other manufacturers, European, Asian, Russian. They're buying oil from different suppliers, Canada, Russia, Middle East. OPEC is fragmenting. Okay, now that's a scary thought. Think about that. We'll get to that in a few seconds. So the U.S. trade with China will never go back to the way it was. It's just not going to happen. The damage to it is enormous, and everyone is fragmenting. Secondary sanctions only work when the rest of the world is afraid enough to obey them, and they're not. Now they're not going to obey them. And secondary sanction, okay, a regular sanction is sanctioning Russian oil. A secondary sanction is sanctioning a company that buys Russian oil or continues to buy Russian oil. This is, I'm going to beat up your brother because you're dating my sister. This is you're picking somebody who's not involved in the in your war or in your game playing, and you're going to sanction them to put pressure because they have an ally in the third party, or they don't have any problem with the third party. So you're trying to create the problem with the third party with secondary sanctions, and those are failing. And they have been failing. The more we use it as a tool, the more it fails. And it's failing. People are going, screw you, we're not interested. And China made that move, and the move is changing the psychology for a lot of players. Washington isn't just sanctioning Iran, it's threatening the buyer, the shipper, the insurer, the bank, the refiner, and any payment channels. Treasury, that I am no fan of that guy Besson. That guy, well, don't get me started. I'll lose track of where I'm going, and I don't want to do that. Treasury released it saying it targeting for a network of vessels, intermediaries, and buyers that Iran uses to move oils. This is not ordinary diplomacy. It's an economic siege warfare. Our old American Western empire worked because people feared being cut off from the dollar. From the dollar. The new world, and this is what Trump is trying to save, and it ain't working. The new world begins when major countries decide that being bullied by the dollar system itself is the greater risk. And this is where China matters, and the order that they made matters. It is not just about 5 refiners that Besson decided he's going to sanction. This is a test case. If China tells its own companies, which they have, not to obey the U.S. sanctions, and those companies keep trading with Iran, then the sanctions system either escalates toward Chinese banks or starts looking like an old sheriff who has no hat or a horse or anything else. So the sheriff's going to do so. What's he going to do? What is Sheriff Trump going to do? And Europe is completely trapped. So this is like a tragic comedy. Europe is the big loser because it broke with its natural partner, the resources of Russia, and trusted a United States that treats allies like a subcontractor with bad credit, right? Europe make the same basic point from a Russian side, okay? The Iran war has exposed Europe's vulnerability to energy shock. Refined product dependence, manufacturing disruption. Their manufacturing's in bad shape. Food price pressure and massive inflation. The Iran war has further poisoned transatlantic relations. Europe is economically exposed from Ukraine already, and now Iran is piling another shock on top of that. and that Trump is eventually going to blame Europe for failing to open the strait, just as Europe and Ukraine are going to be blamed for the failure in Ukraine. That was Biden's war, and I just couldn't end it. Europe keeps acting as if geography is an optional part of your analysis. It's not. It cut itself off from Russia, the only natural energy and resource partner it had. It subordinated itself to Washington for years, and Washington that now demands loyalty but offers only instability in return. And Europe is watching the Gulf burn, oil rise, trade routes are destroyed, and Washington is telling them to help police the crisis, and Europe had nothing to do with it. They didn't control it. They didn't benefit from it, and they can't afford to do it. This is not strategy. This is a very bad dependency thing. You ought to buy them some of the adult diapers, maybe. China, on the other hand, is acting like a superpower. The U.S. is trying to build a maritime freedom construct around Hormuz, and it's excluding Russia and China as adversaries. Beijing is not begging for permission, though. It's protecting its own energy flow and telling its companies we're not going to honor unilateral U.S. restrictions. Europe keeps asking Washington, what can we do? China tells Washington, we're not doing that. And so, tell you what, it's they're threatening. These threats are happening. So, I'm telling you, the breaking the Hormuz stuff, there were a couple of videos that I watched where a tanker was struck by an unknown projectile north of Fallujah. The crew is safe, but the Reuters report that on May 4, a tanker was hit about 78 miles north of Fallujah. The same, what do they call it? U.S. escort operations that they're going to call Project Freedom. And tell you what, I'm not sure what's going to happen there, but Trump's Project Freedom includes guided missile destroyers, 100 aircraft, drones, 15,000 service members, and Trump is warning that interference with it would be handled forcefully. So Washington's calling it a humanitarian escort, but if your humanitarian mission comes with missiles and destroyers, aircraft, drones, threats of force, the other side is going to read it as a military operation, which it absolutely is. So then I watched a guy named Mikhail Khazin, a Russian dude, and that was extremely interesting, very analytical. He's an economist, and I like listening to this guy because, tell you what, he is a very smart Jeffrey Sachs level economist type, right? And he's changing what he's talking. He isn't talking about necessarily war with Iran. He's more talking about the structure of the old system and how it's disappearing. The core point is that the petrodollar wasn't about selling oil in dollars. It was about the oil export surplus being recycled into the United States Treasury bonds, U.S. assets, U.S. financial markets, and the broader dollar system. And oil revenues generated surplus dollars that couldn't be used domestically by countries like Bahrain, by Saudi Arabia, Qatar. So the dollars flowed back into the United States because they would take payment in what? The petrodollar, which is basically U.S. Treasury bonds and assets, right? Well, they're not doing that anymore. They are backing away from that. And this is key because this is important. The Iran war threatens oil flow. The U.S. sanctions threaten oil buyers. China is telling refiners not to obey U.S. sanctions, and China's Ministry of Commerce instructed domestic companies, do not apply. And, they're targeting our refineries, and we're not going to do that because here's what Beijing says. They're trying to use the system. Beijing is saying that sanctions without a UN mandate are illegal and interfere with normal trade, and the conflict is not just over Iran's oil, it's over the big system. Then the UAE is doing what? Leaving OPEC. Now remember, this is not a side story. What is it? Petroleum Exporting Countries, Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. This is about petroleum. and they all act as one. Enerdata reports that the UAE announced its withdrawal from OPEC and OPEC Plus effective May 1 after 59 years, citing their own national interest and expanded domestic production capacity. Plus, they're building a pipeline to avoid going through the Straits of Hormuz. They're building it to go south of Oman on their own territory still. And the UAE OPEC issue is a big deal, and it's going to lead to the collapse of the old pricing system. Okay? So the pricing system is what OPEC controls the most. And so if that system, if the collapse of the pricing system and the system breaks, oil pricing is going to split into separate currency zones. New York, Beijing, Moscow, Delhi, Mumbai, instead of one unified dollar-centered model. That is enormous. That's huge. And if you don't understand it, you might look into it some. The point is not simply that America has too much debt, because it does, and that oil prices are too high. That's true. And Trump is trying to take over he's trying to corner the world market. He is a pirate. He wants to corner the market, and he must control all the oil, or the Western dominated dollar disappears. And it's a risk game, and it's a big risk. Why is he being so, I don't know, disgusting in my view in what he's saying about decapitation strikes and being a pirate? And I don't think our flag should be a pirate flag. I am a patriot, and I'm not a patriot for pirates. I'm not a patriot for theft. I'm not a patriot for doing what Donald Trump is doing. I'm just not. I disagree wholeheartedly with this approach. I don't like it. The old petrodollar arrangement worked because oil exporters, they weren't pirates. They sold energy, they accumulated dollars, and recycled those dollars back into the American financial system. Why do you think we have such large debt that we never worried about? Because there's always a way to pay it back on the backs of other countries forced to trade through the dollar. This helped finance American debt, American markets, American consumption, and American power. But if the oil system continues to fracture, which it already has, if Iran controls Hormuz, if they end up controlling Hormuz, if China refuses U.S. sanctions and the UAE leaves OPEC, more importantly, if oil begins to be priced differently in Beijing, Moscow, Delhi, and New York, the petrodollar is no longer a universal plumbing system. Remember, yuan is what the Chinese are trading with Iran. No dollar. This is the real fight. It's over the dollar. It becomes, a one regional system among quite a few different regions. And once that happens, Washington can threaten, sanction, and shout. But the question becomes whether the rest of the world has to listen to them. It's there were other usable arguments. Washington has mistaken tactical damage for strategic success. You heard him talk about the Pentagon-style reporting, targets, tons, ships destroyed, the body counts, we killed all this. We got rid of this bigger percentage. And the U.S. can win metrics, but they're losing the war. And who was that I listened to McGregor, and his point was he tried to equate it to what's going on in Iran to what went on in Vietnam. He says that Vietnam, body counts just rose, but allegedly the U.S. forces won every battle and lost the war. If you don't have people that are going to comply at any level, forget it. You're not going to win. And Iran's goal is survival, not beauty points. Iran has spent years preparing to withstand U.S. and Israeli attacks. 47 years they have spent trying to defend themselves. You take the opposite position. They are no danger if you leave them alone. They aren't a danger if you leave them alone. Oh, no, they fund all these other people in Hamas. What's Israel do? Israel's doing the same damn thing in reverse, and they threaten everybody with nuclear weapon all the time. They aren't a part of the non-proliferation treaty. Why do people ignore that? But only for Israel. Israel doesn't have to play by anybody's rules. Israel does what it wants, when it wants, and U.S. jumps on board almost every single time. Certainly Donald Trump does. So I don't know. The U.S. is left without a clean move right now. Iran doesn't need to look untouched to win. It only has to keep standing. It only has to keep pressure on shipping, and then it can prove that the U.S. force cannot dictate all the outcomes. It's true. And the Israel policy, the lobby pressure, U.S. strategic interest, the military-industrial complex interests. It's a very scary time that we're living in economically. Europe isn't leading. Vucic said that he says the U.S.-EU relationships have reached a point of no return, and he warns that countries like Serbia are tied to economically and politically to both. But Europe isn't leading. Europe is reacting. It reacted to Ukraine by cutting itself off from Russia. It reacted to Iran by absorbing higher energy costs and not crying too much about it. It reacted to Trump by complaining, but then waiting to see what Daddy in Washington does next. And Vucic's point is that the U.S. and Europe no longer have common or identical interests. That's not anti-American propaganda. It's reality. The U.S. can pull troops out of Europe, sanction oil pressure, sanction buyers, pressure China, and militarize the Straits of Hormuz. Europe gets the bill, they get the inflation, the industrial pressure, and more political instability. It's not an alliance of equals between Europe and America. It's, Trump's the landlord, and these are the tenants who got to comply. So, the tanker being hit near Fallujah, the end of the automatic obedience. I tell you what, the Iran war began as an attempt to discipline Tehran. Alleged discipline somehow. Forced it. Whether you believe they had nuclear capability right now or not, I don't believe that. And by the way, neither did the leader of the IAEA, who I told you about on my show on Thursday. They don't believe that. They don't believe that Iran was dangerously close to a nuclear weapon. They had it. No, they didn't. And your experts know they didn't. Netanyahu can twist you however he'd like to, but this war started to discipline and control Tehran, wipe out the top leaders. Trump can be disgusting and say, "Oh, geez, we love regime change. That's what we want." Tell you what, it didn't help him any, did it? Iran is still standing, and as long as they're still standing, America loses, and the world economy loses. And now, whether or not Washington can still discipline the world is a very large question. China's refusing these sanctions. They're saying, well, screw you, tough, we're not doing it. Iran is using Hormuz as leverage. The UAE is walking away from OPEC. Understand how big that is, or try to. And Iran gets to control Hormuz, and I think ultimately that there was a story last week, and I haven't been able to find any confirmation of it, that I'd like to see what's really going on in the Straits of Hormuz, because we're not getting accurate reporting of what's going on over there. Nobody is, I don't think. There's not enough Telegram-style reporting, people running around with cameras over there trying to show what's happening. And you can't get into the Straits of Hormuz. And so it's a place where you can make up your own results. But if you're watching the bigger picture of what's happening since the fracturing of economics worldwide, listen to Jeffrey Sachs. Listen to that guy. And he's on a much larger scale. I enjoy economics. I have a degree in economics, but I never really used it like he did. And I like, one of the things I always liked was analysis of events, how one thing affects another, because that's all it is economics, is seeing if something is affected by another and whether it is or isn't, and probability tables, and whether or not this is really affected by, the professor would always have you, take some sort of analysis and say, there are 1 million cats in the world, and 20% of them are white. How often do 2 cats get born white that have parents that have no white on them? See what, and you'd come up with something like that. Whether or not heritage has anything to do with the color of your, what color your cat has, or eye color, or anything. Maybe that's a bad example, but whatever the effect is, this is what you have, this is how we do it. So I wonder about these sanctions. On a small scale, you take a sanction of 5 countries, and this is the first volley at China directly, okay? Saying in China's not playing, they're refusing. And I think once China refuses, everyone else will refuse and go, well, how'd China do that? How can we get into the system that China is using? And more people are going to go that way. That's what I believe. Meanwhile, the UAE is out of OPEC. Europe is split from the United States in interests, even if not yet a formal policy. The broader point is that the petrodollar order is not collapsing because one country gave a speech. It's weakening because the political system below it, oil flow, maritime control, surplus recycling, and the fear of U.S. sanctions are all being contested at the same time. That is what is going on. And I think it's going to be interesting at a minimum to watch how this results. Tomorrow, I plan to start the show with Dmitry Medvedev and his appearance, and talk about some of the issues that are important, because you'd noticed how it's very well put together, and I like to see how young people are considering things and asking questions about their own future and how the events of the world discusses it. I'd like to find a similar U.S. sort of thing, but our politicians don't, of the Dmitry Medvedev level, don't necessarily hold such events. And so this is a unique deal for me. I'm Samuel Trapp. This is International Flavor. Hope you join us every day, 7:30 a.m. to 9 a.m. Happy Monday to you, and I will plan on seeing you tomorrow. Shield Maidens of Missouri is next with Lisa and Stacy.